should we get to our second storyline here? Because it does tie into Luis Castillo. Again, part of the reason some of Luis Castillo's numbers are being inflated are a credit to poor defense. If you really want to take something away from what's transpired over the last couple games, let's look at the defense, because this Mariners defense, especially on the infield, it's had its issues so far.
Just issues? No, man.
How would you like to put it?
It's not been good. But the thing is, like, if we sit here and say, should you be like angry at the Mariners defense? Like, you can be, but rest assured, unlike Luis Castillo, I'm not so sure this gets better. Is like, how do they plan on getting better on the infield defense? Like, this is what it is. We talked about in the offseason. The defense is going to step backwards. They're going to get worse at least 4 defensive spots. At least 4 defensive spots. And, you know, the eye test has shown that through 7 games. They are worse. There have been plays at third base that should have been made that weren't. There have been plays at second base that should have been made and that weren't. And the range in the corners right now has not been great. It's not been good enough. For some pitchers that give up fly balls into the corners, you want those to be outs, but with less range in those corner outfield spots, instead of being an out, it turns into an extra base hit. And how damaging is that?
Is the storybook totally out on Dom Canzone as a defender? I don't think it is. I know like that play in the corner wasn't great on opening night, but I don't think he's some awful defender. I think he's going to be a league average defender.
It's not. No, the book is not out totally on Dom Canzone. He's got plenty of playing career ahead, but so far it's not been good. Right? And he could get better, but how much better can like one get defensively in the outfield in season like this? Like how big of a step? Like 1 out above average? Like that's not a huge jump if we're talking about like on a rate basis, how much better Dom gets.
No, but he's by OAA and DRS through 7 games been rated 0. So this is what I mean. By the numbers, he's a league average defender right now. The play in the corner on opening night wasn't great because it turned a double into a triple, but I don't think Dom Canzone is some bad defender. Again, I think he'll be perfectly fine out there. If you really want to highlight 2 positions, I talk about the infield, and it's second base and third base, and that's what I want to revert back to because you just alluded to it. J.P. Crawford and Ty France have been totally fine so far. Actually, Crawford through 7 games has been a little above league average as a defender. That's a nice sign to see. Jorge Polanco through 7 games is at -4 defensive runs saved. That is a higher total than he has accrued throughout a season in any full season he's played at second base. So he's got plenty of time to up those DRS numbers, but he's never finished a season with anything lower than -3 defensive runs saved at second base, and he's currently at -4 through 7 games. That's where the issues currently lie defensively.
And that's a premium defensive position right there, up the middle. And he had that ball on Wednesday go right off his glove. It like should be caught. Like should be. If you played high school baseball, your coach is going to say, "Why didn't you catch that ball?" Like
right.
That. Like that's where we're at, and it's that, and the range too hasn't been great. Like the range, and we saw the communication issue with JP. Man, it doesn't help that he's gotten off to a slow start at the plate, and people start looking at all of these things. We think Polanco's going to hit, but I don't think Polanco's getting, like, again, that much better on defense throughout the season. Like, it would take roster shuffle to make this team significant, take an actual step forward on defense this year. So
here's what I propose to that. Yeah. And I'm going to contradict myself a little bit with what we just talked about with Castillo, with me saying it's early. Well, I do believe that with Castillo. I also believe that with the offense. I know this isn't one of our talking points on this show, but guys, this offense is going to figure it out. They are not going to hit like this all season. I can promise you that. For as many gripes as everybody had with the offense last year, they were still top 10 in the league in WRC+. And now this roster is better offensively. So give it time. They're going to hit. But you're right, TJ. What you're talking about defense not always stabilizing, that is true. This may be what they have. And what I propose with this is, here's where I'm going to contradict myself because I'm already thinking about alternative scenarios. If Ryan Bliss gets to the point this year where he's ready for a call-up, do they start to do some position shuffling? And why I ask that, Josh Rojas grades better as a second baseman than he does as a third baseman. Would they consider trying to put Polanco over at third, and when Bliss comes up, him and Rojas platoon at second base? That might do something. Polanco's not great defensively anywhere he plays, but if you can maximize Rojas's defensive ability and platoon him with Bliss, that might do something.
But wouldn't you want Bliss playing more so you can get his glove on the infield more, right?
But he'd platoon at second base, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Rojas is much better at second base than third.
Is that a step forward?
Something.
It is something, you're right, but a step forward. Because at some point, they're going to hit. If in a bad scenario they don't hit, they're going to need all the pitching they can get. And you know what's the worst combination you could possibly have? The most frustrating version of a team where you don't hit, you can really pitch, but you can't play defense behind that pitcher, so that you need to prevent that one run. You need to prevent that one run from coming across the board that your offense can't scratch out, which is the scenario the Mariners ran into these first 7 games. But your defense boots that run away. That's essentially what the Mariners are right now. So I don't know if that's a move yet that would prevent that run, to be honest.
So my counter to that is, through 7 games, there is a very, very real possibility that Rojas turns this thing around, because he does have the most experience playing third base just by innings. He's at -2 defensive runs saved at third base right now. He grades better as a second baseman. He spent more time at third, grades better at second. So, again, it may be a step forward if they were to make that move. Polanco, you're probably going to have to just hope Perry Hill can work with him to be a league average defender wherever he plays.
Yeah.
But it may do something defensively if all of a sudden Rojas goes back to second and splits some time with Bliss. And if Bliss ends up being the better defender of all 3, then you can put Bliss in late game situations too to play defense. Now, he's not going to play third because he's a second baseman almost exclusively with a little bit of experience at short. But that may do something.
Yeah, it could. So we're missing one position here. Are we just going to have to accept that right field will not grade out average in the out defensively?
Maybe I still hold on to the idea way too much of how Mitch Haniger actually used to be a very, very good defender out there. It may just be gone now. And truthfully, he's not supposed to be playing right field every day. He's supposed to be getting more days off his feet. He'll see some time at DH sometimes. That hasn't happened so far. So far, they've relied on him heavily, and hopefully he stays healthy all year because they need his bat. But who's your best option out there? It's probably Rayleigh defensively, and we'll have to see how he grades out through a full season.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rayleigh, you'd hope just on his speed alone would be your second best defensive option in the outfield. Mm-hmm. Range-wise. Arm, right. Dom's got a good arm, but range-wise, it's Julio and Rayleigh. But Rayleigh's seen the field the fewest of all of them, which certainly doesn't help the defense. And you have Demo as well. He's a left fielder. So that would probably be a scenario, Rayleigh and right, Demo and left, if he's going to go out there and play.
So Demo can play right. As we know, he's played everywhere except for pitcher and catcher. But he doesn't really have the arm for right field. He has the range to play right field. Doesn't have the arm.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we saw that. Speaking of defense, he had a throw to the plate on Wednesday, not like a little bit offline as well. But regardless, I'm not worried about Demo's defense in the outfield because I actually think he's a pretty good defender out there. So there are options to improve 3 of the 4 defensive positions, as we highlighted. Dom improvement in the outfield, 1. 2, and that this is without barring injuries. Cade Marlowe, if he comes up, decent defender as well, who can play in the outfield. We saw him play in center field last year, spelling Julio a little bit. And then the movement on the infield. That feels like, without an absolute, a super drastic change, that feels like what is realistic with this team. Because otherwise, this is what it's going to be, and they're going to have to be able to outscore their defensive inefficiencies. They're flat out going to have to do that. Because otherwise, it's going to be really frustrating to watch.
Yeah. And look, Polanco last year played over 100 innings at third base. That's not a huge sample size, but he did. And he graded as a league average defender. Will that sustain if they move him back to third at some point? I hope so, because that really may be a step forward. Look, for I know much less than the Mariners do about why they're deploying certain guys at where they're deploying them. I'm not 7 games in trying to reshuffle the entire defensive alignment. I'm just saying, what if down the road could they look at in terms of other options? And that may be another option. Polanco can play third. So if they feel like, well, maybe Josh Rojas is best suited at second rather than third, and maybe we can move Polanco to third and he'll be fine over there, they may look at that. They're not going to do it yet. Again, this is the overarching theme of what's going to be most of our first couple shows. Is very, very early in the season. They could go out and sweep the Brewers this weekend, and then people are going to forget about a lot of this stuff. And if the defense looks a little bit better, people will start to ease off. But these scenarios still have to be talked about because defense is the least likely of the 3 facets of the game to stabilize between hitting, pitching, and defense. So if you're going to highlight one aspect of the team this early in the year, you do look at the defense. They're not going to change it yet. They may have to at some point.
Who are the Mariners' good defenders?
Cal, absolutely.
Yep.
Behind the plate. Julio, absolutely.
Yep.
For the most part, it is those two. I mean, you're going to have to hope JP can bounce back at shortstop this year and play a little bit better defense, which maybe this is an interesting topic for some discourse too. What do we make of that, by the way? I've seen a lot of people on Mariners Twitter, and not like some of the at Mariners fan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. It's people that the two of us respect and trust that say the metrics don't tell the full story on JP Crawford. He is a good defender. What do we make of that? I think we can definitively say both on eye test and numbers, going to his right on those backhand balls is not his strong suit. But overall, do we not give him enough credit for his defense? I don't know, because the numbers are the numbers, but but some people say defensive metrics are pretty flawed.
I don't think we're being unfair. I think we would have a better context if we more recently got to watch a truly elite defensive shortstop, like truly elite, which you could, like JP was, someone who was not JP Crawford, like somebody besides JP Crawford who was truly an elite defensive shortstop, which we haven't seen probably since Brendan Ryan, right? But you and I don't.
Well, no, we saw it for a couple of years with JP when he won a Gold Glove.
Not named JP Crawford because there's a bias there. There's the vision that a lot of people have now that he's still an elite defender, which you and I don't think that is, right?
Yeah, look, the last couple of years he has not been that, but he's off to a better start. And again, I'll just give some other people some credit here. There's other people in the Mariners, social media verse or people that do Mariners content that seem to like to give JP more credit for his defense and say, you know what? I don't think the metrics tell the full story on him here. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying we're right. I'm just proposing the other side of the argument in terms of who are the Mariners' good defenders, with me saying, should we give him more credit?
And what I'm saying is that we kind of, like, a lot of people probably have JP lens, just remembering how good he was as a Gold Glover as opposed to now, right? And it can affect your view. So, like, more recently seeing an elite defensive shortstop play every single day for your baseball team whose name is not JP Crawford. And, like, that's Brendan Ryan. It's 10 years ago, which you might maybe better than me be able to recall exactly. Yeah, I remember, like, this is exactly fundamentally what he did 10 years ago, 11 years ago to be this elite at shortstop. So that would be a little bit more helpful to clarify, like, really what level of defense JP is playing at short. I still, like, makes the routine plays, but I still see too many gaffes. Like, elite shortstops do not make mistakes, period. Like, they don't. And it's not just arm. It's not throwing accurately. It's range as well. It's making all sorts of off-platform throws. And I'm watching JP, it's not all there, unfortunately.
So to answer your original question then of who are the good Mariners defenders or the really good ones, you have Cal and you have Julio. Is that it?
Yeah. Yep. Unless you want to give it to a pitcher, but, pitcher pitches once every 5 days. So,
right.
That's about it. And I think that paints a pretty stark picture of the Mariners and puts that much more pressure on them to have to make up for that in other areas. Like, you got to be able to catch the ball.
And that is different than last year. They rid themselves of strikeouts this offseason, but if you want to look at the defense, Gino was a great defender last year. He's not there. Kelnick's a great defender. He's not there. So you take away some defense. You do. you're hoping the offense compensates and overcompensates for what will be a lesser defensive team. But yeah, you can't play atrocious defense all year and win the amount of games you want to win. It just doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. But the Mariners have two choices right now. They can continue playing poorly, or they can find a way to mitigate their middling defense and not have it lose them games. That's the most important thing. I don't think the defense lost the Mariners games, period, in these first 7 games. Like, flat out, the defense was the reason they lost. I don't think that was the case. It was certainly a part of it, but it wasn't the reason. The point on from here on out is for that not to be the point. Not to be, that's going to lose you games.
I will say, in the Mariners' first win of the year, that throw from Luis Urias at third base got him pretty close, but shout out Ty France. Again, grades usually, and including right now through 7 games, is a league average defender, but he made a hell of a pick out of the dirt to save a run and keep the lead for the Mariners. So, unless you're Evan White, which Evan White, when he was winning a Gold Glove in 2020 and in early 2021 before he got hurt, unless you're Evan White, it's hard to really stand out as a defensive first baseman. But Ty France, I think, plays perfectly capable defense at first base. He's pretty good at digging those balls out of the dirt. I'm not going to call him in the Cal or Julio range, but that's another guy that does what he's supposed to do over there.
Well, credit to Ty, but wouldn't the other side of that battery offset it? A poor throw dug out by a nice play. That would be like a net, even.
Well, yeah. And Urias is going to have to clean up some of those throws like we talked about on the last show, because you can't have balls in the dirt in clutch situations like that, because that was a pretty routine play and the throw got put in the dirt.
Yeah. Cross your fingers every time a ball gets hit in play, because that's how it feels right now. But Mariners they really don't have any choice but to improve on that. Otherwise, there could be some real problems.